You think it's a routine traffic stop, if such a thing still exists in South Africa's climate of arbitrary enforcement. But then the tone shifts. Not because you ran a red light. Not because your vehicle is unlicensed. No, because you emigrated 2 decades ago and you're driving on a valid Irish license, which by law and precedent is accepted here. Except today, it's not. Either these traffic officials are dangerously uninformed, or they knew exactly what they were doing. Targeting someone who dared to leave, return, and still expect the system to function. Suddenly, your legal status is irrelevant, your foreign license is suspect, and your rights, optional. This isn't about road safety, it's about control, about gatekeeping, about punishing mobility in a country where bureaucracy often trumps logic. And if this can happen to someone with a clean record and a valid license, what does that say about the rule of law? Welcome to the Leandro Show. Stories that touch every South African in one way or another. I got this story from Jacques van Rijn on Facebook after he had this run-in with traffic officers in Klerksdorp in Matlosana municipality. On the morning of Friday 29 August 2025, Jacques was driving with the son of a close lady friend to her residence near the Pick n Pay hypermarket in Klerksdorp. As they approached the traffic lights at the Central Avenue crossing, Jacques noticed a checkpoint ahead. Upon reaching the intersection, he was pulled over by Matlosana traffic officers. Jacques complied, pulling over, switching off his vehicle, and opening his window. One officer informed him that it was a routine vehicle check and requested his driver's license. At this point, Jacques presented his Irish driver's license, which he regularly uses when visiting South Africa as an Irish resident. He explained that this license is valid under international driving regulations. However, the officer disputed its validity, claiming it was not recognized in South Africa. Jacques reiterated that he had used the same license on previous visits without issue, and that South African law only requires a local license if one resides in the country for more than a year. The officer refused to accept this explanation and stated he would issue a fine. Another officer in a greyish uniform approached and asked what the issue was. Jacques explained again that he was using a valid Irish license. The officers then requested his South African ID number. Jacques provided it, but was told they needed his physical ID card. He explained that he was still using his older ID book while awaiting the new card. When asked again for his ID number, Jacques repeated it. One officer accused them of giving attitude. Jacques denied this and informed the officer that he intended to record the interaction on his phone. Upon exiting his vehicle, Jacques was repeatedly bumped by the officer's elbow. He asked the officer to stop it, retrieved his phone, and began recording. At that moment, the officer slapped the phone from Jacques' hands, declaring that he would not be recorded. As Jacques tried to catch the phone mid-air, another officer grabbed him and a physical altercation ensued. A third officer joined in, tearing at Jacques' shirt and accusing him of being a racist. He was told to go back to where he came from, accused of bringing apartheid stories and called crazy. Jacques protested, pointing out that he was the one being physically assaulted. A bystander confirmed witnessing the incident and indicated he had recorded it. Despite Jacques' repeated pleas for the officers to stop bumping and threatening him, he was told, "We will F you up." Jacques responded in kind, but maintained that he never used racist language or referred to any race at any point. Meanwhile, The lady friend's son managed to retrieve Jock's phone and began recording short video clips. When Jock stood in front of his vehicle, another officer arrived. Jock told them that they were invading his personal space, to which one of the officers replied, "You don't have personal space." Another officer called Jock a dog and repeated that he should go back to where he came from. He was mocked as an old man, not right in the head, and told he was an embarrassment to his son, mistaking the young man with him for his child. Jock insisted that he had only been defending himself and that the officers had initiated the physical confrontation. He questioned their accusations, asked whether they were psychiatrists qualified to assess his mental state. One officer claimed he was. Jock was then mocked for acting like a baby. He replied that the officer was not his father and that his father was in heaven. The officer retorted that Jock's faith was part of his problem and that he needed to change his attitude. Jock noted that his family had advised him to always be ready to record such incidents, which is why he had attempted to do so. Having lived abroad for over 20 years, he expressed shock at the treatment he received, stating he never expected to become a statistic of law enforcement abuse. When Jock asked his license back, the officers refused and insisted that someone with a South African license would need to collect the vehicle. Jock explained that he had passed through many checkpoints before, using the same Irish license without issue. Still, the officers refused to accept it. Jock contacted the young man's parents, who agreed to send someone to assist. While waiting in his vehicle, one officer approached and asked how long he intended to stay. Jock replied that help was on the way. The officer pressed him for details about where the assistance was coming from. Was it coming from Potchefstroom or Stilfontein or Klerksdorp? But Jock said he didn't know. The officer then told Jock he could not wait on the side of the road. Jock reminded him that he had been pulled over, was not allowed to drive further, and that the officer was still holding his license. Eventually, the officer received a phone call, returned Jock's license, and told him he could leave, but warned, "We will fight another day." Jock responded that he would see them in court and intended to pursue the matter further. He was issued with a fine, 2,000 rand if the license was deemed invalid, and 1,000 rand even if it was valid. Jock left the scene shaken and frustrated, noting that he had never encountered such treatment from other traffic officials in South Africa. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a moment that exposed something deeper. A citizen, compliant and calm, gets accosted not for breaking the law, but for daring to expect it to be applied fairly. The Irish license is valid. The conduct was lawful. So why the aggression? South Africans aren't just facing law enforcement anymore. We're facing a culture of enforcement where power often trumps principle, where some officials seem more interested in asserting dominance than upholding the law. And when that fails, the race card gets thrown into the mix. Not because racism exists in that moment, but because it's a convenient distraction from accountability. This isn't about traffic, it's about trust, about whether the uniform still represents justice or just unchecked authority. And if we don't speak up, document and demand better, then silence becomes complicity. What would you do? Let me hear your thoughts in the comment section. If you found any value in this video, please do like, share and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one. And for that raspy voice, I do apologize. I am still recovering from a bad flu.